Welcome. One more time for Hugh Spight. Thank you. So basically we're going to go over his life and career and talk about some different things. And at the end, we've done some really fascinating, interesting things. I mean, you've worked with everyone from David Lynch to Jim Henson, George Lucas, Richard Marquand. I mean, you know, the list goes on and on. First of all, I'd like to start kind of at the beginning. One of the things I read was that you started off as a midshipman as a young man.
Yes, at 16 I wanted adventure, so I joined the Merchant Navy as a cadet, and my claim to fame is that I sailed around the world when I was 16 years old. Wow. I happened to get on the ship that was going right around the world, from down to South America, Panama Canal, Hawaii, Japan, Philippines, Singapore, Suez Canal, back home. And we got home in July, and I was 17 in August. So that's my claim to fame.
Now, did you know that when you first got on the ship, it was actually going to be? You think, you know, this would just be a 3-hour tour?
No, you never know. You never know with where a ship's going. They don't tell you until you're well on your way, and you never know when you're coming home. So it's one of those.
So, at that time, were you interested? Because I know you studied dance, and did you know you wanted to go into the arts and possibly dance and study?
No, that was a complete surprise to me. Eventually, I came out of the Navy I did about 2.5 years, and I got involved with a drama group, a little amateur drama group, and we did a production, a Shakespeare production, and then we did another production for a competition, and we won first prize. And the director said to me, "Have you ever thought about taking acting seriously?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I think you should." So I said, "How do I take it seriously?" He said, "You have to go to drama college." I said, "How do I go to drama college?" He said, "You have to audition." He said, "I'll help you." So I auditioned, and I got into Cardiff College of Music and Drama to be an actor. So I was in my first year, and we actually did movement and fencing, and I liked all this very physical stuff. And then a local ballet school contacted the college to say, would any boys be interested in being in a production, because they didn't have any boys in the school, hadn't had any boys in the school for years. So 3 of us went really just to look at the ballerinas. And anyway, through the process of the rehearsals and everything, I got to know this ballet mistress, and I said to her, I enjoyed these movement classes that we do. And she said, "Would you like to come to the school and do classes for free?" We haven't had a boy for 8 years or something in the school. Now I'm 19 years old, and this is going on back a long way. This is the 60s, when anybody involved with ballet was a bit iffy, you know. And I wrestled with that one for a bit, because I thought, oh God. So I thought, I won't tell anybody I'm doing this. So I started these ballet classes. And do you know the film Billy Elliot? Yeah. I'm like an original Billy Elliot. And I had the little girls laughing at me, and you know, I was sort of struggling there, you know. Anyway, so I was doing this and for a couple of months, and I was working part-time sometimes in a pub at night, and a friend of mine came in with these 2 very attractive girls, and they were both professional dancers. He was working backstage at a local theatre, and of course he brought them to my pub because he could get free drinks, you see. That's the only reason they came. And I got to know one of them. I quite liked her, and we started going out, and one night we went dancing, and she said, "You've got to be a dancer." And I said, "No, I'm going to be an actor." And she said, "No, you've got to be a dancer." I said, "I'm 19 years old and I've done 3 months of ballet, you know." And she said, "There's this one school in London that you've got to go to." She wrote to the school and came with 3 audition dates. Now, I was terrified, to be honest. Can you imagine, after 3 months of doing a bit of ballet in a provincial ballet school, to go up to London and audition? I was terrified. And somehow, I don't know how I did it, the last date, I went up to London for the last audition date. And I did something, I didn't do an audition. I got the class started, and if you know how ballet starts with the bar work and everything, and he just said, they put me between two girls, he said, just follow what they do. And then they went into this to do the center work, and it was so difficult. I thought, I'm not even going to try and do it. So I said, I was like this, leaning up against the bar for 3/4 of an hour. I didn't do a thing. And he dismissed the class, then called me over and gave me a couple of jumps to do, and he said, thank you very much. And I just get out of here, you know. And then somebody came and said, the secretary wants to see you, and they said, Mr. Hardy has accepted you for the 2-year course.
And you got a scholarship for that, right?
Yes, I went to my local government authority, and they were so amazed that some boy from Wales would go to London and do ballet that they gave me an independent grant from my parents and, you know, financed the whole thing. So that was. I'm sorry, this got very long-winded.
Oh no.
But that's how it started anyway. My dancing career.
Yeah, and I mean, you're an award-winning dancer as well. So I mean, obviously you kind of stumbled into that, and it paid off very, very well because, of course, that movement led on to other things. Yeah,
I mean, when I was at school, I saw a company that I thought that's the company I wanted to be in. And 5 years later, I was a soloist in that company, and that brought me to London and changed my life, and it was a wonderful time.
Excellent. Yeah. So from school, after you got out, what was your first, would you say, like professional job in dance or performance?
I already had a contract before I left school. A German choreographer came over from Heidelberg in Germany, and he took 5 of us from the school. And I was one of them. So I went to Germany, and then in Heidelberg I did a year, then I went up to the north of Germany to Braunschweig for 3 years, and then to Vienna, and then to Switzerland, by which time I'm bilingual German, I've learned German. And I came home for a holiday, and Rombe were auditioned this dance company that I really loved, and another girl said, you've got to go and audition. I said, no, I'm not going. She said, you've got to go. And women have played a bit of a role in my life when it comes to, you know, these little turning points in my life. And, so I did, and then I got in, and I was, that was the high point, really, of my dancing career. I loved that company.
As far as you getting into film work, you did some work on David Lynch's The Elephant Man. Was that your very first time for anything that you had done that was in front of the camera?
Yes, that was the first film. No, I did some work it was a film called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I was in that, and a little sort of like, just nothing really, but I was in it. And that was a role that I played, and I only played a cat. There's a pantomime character, Puss in Boots. I don't know if you know that all about this in America, but anyway, I was this cat, and I worked so hard at this cat and doing the movements, and then I had to talk as well. I had a role, and I worked so hard at doing this cat voice. And then when the film came out, I looked at it. I'm a sort of bit of a blur. This next time, which is typical in the film business. You never quite know what they're going to do and what they'll edit out and what they put in. So that was my first through the dance. Yeah, that led to it. And then from there, the Muppet people were auditioning. I saw an advertisement that Henson were auditioning for the film Dark Crystal, and they wanted dancers, actors, circus performers, acrobats. So I thought, I'll go up for this. So I went up and I got the job, but I was taken onto pre-production, and basically then they would build the costumes on me, and I would develop the movements and of the characters and stuff like that. And there's one, a stilt character. It was 3. Stop doing that.
Here, take mine.
No, it's okay. It was 3 meters high, and I got somebody to teach me stilts, how to walk on stilts, so that I could do this character. And I watched giraffes, films of giraffes galloping, and I copied that. And
So-
never been done before.
When you first got hired for Dark Crystal, I mean, obviously you knew who Jim Henson was, you knew his work. Did you realize the groundbreaking techniques that they were going to start trying to utilize in the creation of that film? Did you know it was going to be a 2-year process to create that film? Or was this something that you thought was going to be just kind of a quick gig and move on to the next one? Did you know it was going to be as involved?
Yes, they broke new ground with that film. They really did in so many ways, and it was a privilege to be part of it. Actually, that creative process, to be surrounded with people with so much talent and ability. It was very, just very moved me and changed my life. I became a movement coordinator eventually on full body puppetry. That's what I became. And that's when we were at Elstree Studios, and that's where Star Wars came in. They had the big stage there, and they came over and just asked some of us, would we be interested in coming on to Star Wars? We went, yeah, all right. It sounds a bit blasé, but in those days you had no idea what Star Wars was going to become. There was the generational fan base hadn't begun. It was just another job, basically. So we did it, and a couple of years later, from that I went into Cats, the musical Cats. I went into Cats then for a while, and then a couple of other things, and then I was offered a job in Hamburg, in Germany, in a musical, the lead role. So I thought, I'll go and do that for a couple of months, and things. Well, I ended up staying 15 years in Hamburg, because there was so much work. It's a media city. There's so much work there. So, and I'm doing this because I'm now bilingual, and I can be Scotsman and Irishman and also Australians, everything in German. And the Germans can't do that. They're not very good at it. So I had this little corner of the market, niche of the market. We're doing these crazy accents, but as well as doing computer games and being trees and carrots and crows. And
so you do a lot of voiceover work then as well?
I used to do a lot of voice work, yes. I worked for all the studios in Hamburg, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And the Germans dub everything. You'll never see subtitles in a German film. They dub everything. And my wife, she only knew the German voices. And then when she came to England with me, and suddenly she's hearing the real voice of the she couldn't handle it. She said, oh no, her voice is terrible. Oh. And the German was much better.
Do you know why they only dub and not do subtitles? I've never heard that before. It's fascinating.
Yeah, because I think because of the money. They've got the money to do it.
I see.
And it's just something they've always done. They don't do subtitles.
Interesting. Oh, going back to Dark Crystal.
Yes, sir.
Was this the full time that full body puppetry was utilized in film? Were you kind of on the ground floor for that, as far as you know?
No, body puppetry has always been used, but there were certainly breakthroughs and new techniques.
Because you were one of the mystics, as well as a Skeksis.
Yes.
You can say a little bit about, well, first let's go with the mystic. What was the character that you played?
I played the cook. Rather than the chanter and the we, but they all sound very good. But I was the cook, and I actually do love cooking. I love cooking. Anyway, there we go. Yes, but it was the whole approach to the way things were built, and they really did break new ground.
Yeah, and as far as the Skeksis go, you were.
I was the Lord Chamberlain, and it was Frank Oz, who's Miss Piggy and stuff, and it was Frank Oz and I in the same costume. He's the head, and the left arm and the right arm. So it's right-hand man, and we, it was the first time that we were using little monitors so we could see what the camera is seeing. So we worked like that, and that was again fairly new. To work with monitors inside costumes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also new as well, stilt characters using both legs and arms, and you had not had any kind of previous stilt experience before that?
No, as I say, I got somebody to teach me to walk on stilts, And we basically, Jim Henson said, we need a character to carry the hero and the heroine, the creature that can gallop across the countryside with them on his back. And Brian Frow, the designer, I was there as he just began to draw these things.
Oh, wow.
With the long legs and everything. And I found when I started to, I had a body harness with a safety wire. And I found if they took 60% of my body weight, I could actually gallop. And that's never ever been done before, because if you just stood on stilts, no way can you do it. If your body's not built to do that, you can't possibly do it. But 60% of my body weight, and I could do it. So they had a huge, building site crane like this, so that they could point that in any direction that they wanted me to go. They sort of reeled me in. and then counterbalancing my weight. And as I say, it's never ever been done before.
Did they originally ask if you could do this, or was this something you just offered up? It's like, look, I have these skills. If you would like for this thing to gallop, I can offer that to you.
No, it just developed, and there's a thing called the making of Dark Crystal, and it shows me actually rehearsing and practicing. In the end, I could jump, I could pirouette, I could do anything on the stilts. Just from practicing every day. I would do a couple of hours every day on them, and so it's just finding they needed something. So that's the film industry. You just do it.
Yeah. Yes, and it's like, yeah, I can do that. Okay, how do I do this?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to actually kind of get your stilt and arm legs? Was this a weeks process, or?
Well, it took a while, to be that coordinated that you weren't tripping yourself up and everything like that. But, just with anything, it's just practice and getting it right.
Yeah. Now, it is a killer costume. I heard that it almost was literally the Landstrider.
Yes. When we were shooting, the Landstrider had a head, and that head was radio controlled, and the eyes and everything. So we were just about to do a take, and they said, right, heads on. And I had inside my costume a battery inside here, and they were connecting the cable, just about to put the head on, and smoke started to come up from inside the costume. This is latex and foam rubber, and if that had ignited, I wouldn't be sitting here now. They would never have got me out. I would have just barbecued. I'm afraid. It was very frightening. It was really very frightening. There's been a short circuit and the wires were melting. Just fortunately it didn't ignite. So from then on, there was a fire extinguisher very close to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did they get you back in that costume after that happening? Because I don't know if I would.
No, they didn't let me out. They just said, no, we got it sorted. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all good.
I'm like this, I'm shaking. But,
you'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll get through this. But costumes can kill.
So, working with the Henson Company, you also did some work on The Great Muppet Caper as well. And this was like in the right after Dark Crystal, or like in the middle of working?
Well, it was in the middle of it. They were doing The Great Muppet Caper at the same time as we were rehearsing. Because we actually worked 2 years, from pre-production to filming. It was 2 years on Dark Crystal. I mean, it bought me a beautiful house in the country. And everybody who lives in London has this ambition to move out to the country and live, buy a house. So it gave me that, and I was very grateful. But so we were just working on the Great Muppet Caper at the same time, basically. So, I mean, when a puppeteer has maybe 3 characters that are his personal characters, so if he's doing one and that is in the main shot, then somebody else has got to do the others. So we were all, I think I've had my hand up nearly every Muppet except Miss Piggy. And Kermit, you were never allowed to. But I've rodded, there's a scene with Peter Falk and I in Hyde Park, and then I'm rodding Kermit's hands, so as close as I've got to Kermit. But I think I've done almost every other Muppet, because we just said, right, you do that one, you do that one. So it was good fun.
And then speaking of Kermit, you also were part of, again, another groundbreaking thing as far as puppetry goes with the bicycling in Great Muppet
Yeah, do
Cave
you remember
as well.
that where they're on bicycles and it's called Didn't We Ride? That was filmed in Battersea Park in London, and I'm up on. There was a lorry with a crane, and then a platform, and I was up here. It was a round platform, and I was up there with Brian Henson, Jim Henson's son, who was only 17 at the time, and he's marionetting Miss Piggy, and I'm doing Kermit, and people have looked at it and say, well, Miss Piggy could be a person because she's got fat legs and things. Could be somebody in there. But Kermit, with those legs? You know? No. So it was a fixed wheel, so his feet were attached to the wheel, so as they just turned, so he looked like he was pedaling it. And again, his head was radio controlled, and that was done for the first time. There were servos. Somebody had, he built this thing with a glove, and as he did that, so Kermit would be singing, and that was a breakthrough as well. It was the first time that was done. So it's the thing with a film industry. They've got a lot of money, they've got good budgets, and they've got time, and things get developed, in the process. And you're going to see something now in a year's time that they're doing now, and you said, and you don't even know these things exist. Sometimes the new techniques that eventually come out, but a film takes 2 years to get for you to see it, really.
That's something I think we unfortunately miss with CGI is, the ingenuity of making these things happen. Because now you just put in ones and zeros in computers and boom, there it is. There's a frog riding a bicycle. And, of course, back before then, you really had to think outside the box. And the artistry is just so beautiful. It's just not the same. It's a shame that we're losing that art form.
I think there's a slight swing back to it, actually, because your brain works in a certain way that subconsciously it's registering movement, but it also registers that something isn't quite right, but it doesn't quite know what. But
Uncanny Valley.
It gives you that sort of uncomfortable feeling, but that's the way the brain works. And I think there'll be it's swinging back in a lot of back to puppets and three-dimensional creatures and characters.
Yeah, it's definitely done that with the Star Wars movies. They're going back to, using more puppets and practical effects because, it has heart, it has soul. Speaking of Star Wars, of course, you mentioned like you were on the set at Elstree Studios.
Yes.
And they were basically asking for more full-body puppeteers. If anyone would work on Star Wars, and of course you volunteered.
Yes. No, I got the job because I fitted the costume.
That costume being
the Gamorrean Guard, and I'm actually the one that is holding Harrison Ford, and and people say, what was it like to work with Harrison Ford? Well, he actually told you what you were going to do and what he was going to do, and you just said, okay. And he and with the Gamorrean Guards, it wasn't that we had hands like this. They were actually arm extensions, so they were like this. So they were that much longer than your own arm. Like in a gorilla, it's longer than they normally are. And so we couldn't really get a grip on things, you know what I mean? He was trying to hold him, and he was sort of, and he really went for it. He was really, and in fact, we were trying to take him down the stairs, and he was fighting us, and the other guy who, see, when stairs turn like this, they're wider on that side and thinner on that side. Well, I deliberately chose to stay on this side because our feet were about that big. And the chap on the inside, Swee Lim, he went flying. He went down the stairs, and he was a dancer as well. And he was so annoyed. He said, "I'm not doing this. I said, I'm not risking my life and my legs to do." So somebody else stood in for him. But Harrison Ford was pretty rough, and but I still dine out on the fact that I had a fight with Harrison Ford and won.
And that's not the only character that you played in Jedi as well, right? You were a couple other ones also?
Yeah, sometimes they just say, "Can you put this costume on and go and sit over there?" And I remember doing that, and I couldn't remember who I was. I thought I was a calamari. No, then he said, no, the calamari is not in that scene. But my agent found out who I was, and I'm Prune Face, in one of the characters. So, and that's great, because to discover that you're another character and people were looking for it. But shall I tell the story about Hugh Spight? So.
What's that? Oh,
Yeah.
yes, of course, the
Yeah.
the credits, yeah.
Well, just briefly, that when the credits went up, I went to see the film and the credits went up, the end. And instead of Hugh Spight, was my name, S-P-I-G-H-T, they put Hugh Spirit. So I was a bit gutted because he thought, oh, there's fame out of the window, Thinking, oh well, that's it. And then a couple of years later, I went to Germany, and I just lost contact with everything really when over there, and doing lots of other things. So I sort of heard about Comic Cons, but I was just not, didn't really interest me. And then I came back to this country, and I'd been back about 12 years, and I had a phone call from someone, and he said, and he had traced me. He'd met somebody who knew me, and he said, "Who's this Hugh Spirit?" And he said, "No, his name's Hugh Spight." And he traced me through the electoral roll, and contacted me and said he'd like to meet me. And he wasn't just a fan, but he was a very knowledgeable guy. And I met him, and he said, "Do you know there's people all over the world looking for you?" And I go, no, that's news to me. And then he began to tell me about the whole thing, how the Star Wars and all this Comic-Con stuff works. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And then shortly after this, somebody brought me a newspaper cutting about the unsung heroes of Star Wars, was a little heading. And somebody was making a documentary about people like me who are not seen, and nobody knows them. I mean, how they got into Star Wars, what they thought about it, how it affected their lives, and da-di-da. So I contacted the newspaper to try to get in touch with this person. And I told her I wanted to, that's why I was making the inquiry. And she said, "May I ask why?" And I said, I was in Star Wars, but my name was misspelt, and so I said, nobody really knows who I am. And she said, "That's a very interesting story, but would you mind if you made an article about you in the paper?" So I went, "Oh, okay." So they said, "We'll send a reporter and a photographer," and 2 days later they did. And so it went into the newspaper, and what that did was give me complete legitimacy, And there I was in print, and the story of how this had happened. And then I saw locally there was in Banbury, which is north of Oxford where I live, they were having a Comic-Con, and he said with guest Star Wars, guests. And I thought, oh, I'll phone them up. And I said hello, and I said my name's Hugh Spight, and he said, Hugh Spight, the Gamorrean guard. I said, yes. And he said, "And you've never done a Comic-Con?" I said, "No." He said, "Oh my goodness." He said, "This is going viral." and within 2 hours, all over Facebook. And he said, "Well, would you like to come on the day to?" He said, "I want you at the show." And he said, "If you come in the morning to the hotel where all the guests are, I'll introduce you to them." So I went, and I didn't know anyone, to be honest. And I did that day, and there was a lady called Virginia Hay, who was Mad Max and a Bond girl, all sort of thing, lovely, lovely lady. And she came to me afterwards. She said, "Well, darling, you obviously don't know what you're doing." So she said, I'm going to help you so that you don't get ripped off like I was when I first started. And she was brilliant. She'd sent me about 8 emails the following week. And she said, "I also know one of the top agents in Britain." And 2 days later, he called me and signed me up. So here I am. Wow. Yes. Oh, she's a lovely woman. Very, very nice one.
Yeah. And the subsequent releases on video, they never got your name right in the credits? That kind of bewilders me.
No, I just wondered who I could sue, actually. For loss of earnings in 38 years.
Might live at Skywalker Ranch. I don't know.
Anybody know a good lawyer?
So a few years later, after Jedi, you got involved with Doctor Who, and actually one of the most iconic storylines involving the Daleks, with Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, in remembrance of the Daleks.
Yes.
What was it like being inside of one of those machines, and how do you act? How do you emote in something like that?
Right. The only way to describe it is pathetic. This is me in a Dalek.
In the dark. I swear to you.
Wow.
I thought it was going to be so sophisticated. It was like pick up your Dalek and walk. It was absolutely dreadful. Really.
Was it really?
And the Daleks hadn't done anything for years, and they said, "Oh, we're getting the original guys who know who did the Dalek." And this is like 20 years or something. They all kept, and this guy said, "Well, if somebody gives me a little lift with my leg, and I can get my leg in the Dalek." Only one of them managed to get in the Dalek. And we had other adventures because they had to blow up a Dalek. And we did this, and it was in the time in London and England when the IRA were blowing up everything. And so they did this big, they have a bazooka, and they had to blow this Dalek up, and they did it. And it was an almighty bang, and it was we were at an entrance to a tunnel, so that amplified the whole thing. Oh. And the next thing was nee 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 nee. The fire engines, the police, the ambulances, everything, and nobody in production had told them that this was going to happen. They were furious with us. So that's the day the Dalek blew up.
Which was the sequel. So after that, you started your own special effects company?
Oh yeah, after I finished with the Dark Crystal and Star Wars, I've been working with these incredible talented people for all this time, and I knew them very, very well. And they were all freelance, and they had their little studios and workshops. So I thought, I want to start my own company. So I started Animatronics Limited, and basically I would go and look for work on television or commercials, anything, and then I would get the things, I would get drawings done and present things, and then if they took it, then I'd build them and perform them. So, I started doing all sorts of children's televisions and commercials, and, with Animatronics Limited, and I say with some incredibly talented people, gifted people around me all the time. So
that's really great. All right. Well, I think that's enough from me. I'm going to open up the floor to any kind of questions. If anyone has any questions, yes, with the Star Wars hat in the back.
Yeah, I have a question about the striders. Kind of like how it works. So you had stilts on your hands and your feet. And you're bent over inside the thing?
Yes.
It's this sort of shape.
I'm amazed you can even do it.
Yeah. No, as I say, without that line, and I've got photographs on my table, and you can see that, but it had to take 60% of my body weight. Then I could do anything.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just seems like a marvelous contraption to build for a film, and actually get to make that thing work.
Well, my rear feet, the front were carbon fibre, and the back feet the ankle had a joint and a compression joint in it as well. And the guy that built that built the landing gear of Concorde.
Oh, wow.
He literally was. And he's a fantastic guy, and there was, to work with people like that, that's the people they'd sort of bring in to do this sort of stuff,
Did you also control the head, or was that done with a remote off?
No, the eyes were all remote controlled, yeah, and the puppet on the top as well, when they talked. Yeah. And then we had a mock-up of one that the puppeteer could have the hand inside, and it was just filmed from a certain angle, so it looked like it was galloping, little tricks.
It's fascinating. Thanks.
Thank you.
The gentleman in front had a question. Yes, sir.
Do you ever see the making? Do you remember the movie Congo from 1995?
I beg your pardon?
Congo, the 1995 movie with Jodan Baker, Chris Campbell, and all that.
There's a movie called Congo. He was asking if you had seen that, because there was some, you're talking about the animatronics that were done in that?
No, I haven't. Sorry, sir, I haven't seen that one.
Well,
What do they do?
I think it was fascinating that all animatronics, yeah, as you said, it is very fascinating how you have to work and like dance to how it should look. And also, what was the worst injury that you suffered aside from that near fire accident?
Unfortunately, I didn't have any injuries. Had some close calls. Had a couple of falls with the Landstrider, but they check. They hit before I hit the ground. They check it. So things like that. But it was that almost that fire incident. That was a bit of a shake-up. It really was frightening.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you very much. You have a question?
In the Dark Crystal, how many hours would you have to stay in that costume? I was 7 when that came out. I love that film.
Yeah, when you do costume work, you're really looked after very, very well, because if you start your working day and within 2 hours they've exhausted you, then they can't shoot the rest of the day. So they look after you very well, and we would rehearse things before we got into the costumes, we could take the position and walk and do everything without the costume on, just to get everything in the right position. Then we get into the costumes and do it again before they actually would put the heads on. It's always when the heads went on, that's when things got. But then we do 2 or 3 takes, and then it heads off. Stool underneath you, cold hairdryer, blowing you, so cooling you down. And we were very well looked after. Each one of us had 2 people looking after us all the time. So they treat you well.
Excellent. So a question over here? Yeah, Jessica Jones.
So you were Frank Oz's right-hand man. What was Frank like as a performer and as a director? Because he directed.
Yeah, but no, he went on to do a lot more serious directing.
What was he like?
Both Jim Henson and Frank Oz were like middle-aged hippies. They were so laid back. And I never saw Jim Henson lose his cool ever. All the time I was there, he was the most well-balanced, approachable man you could possibly meet. It was wonderful. It was such a tragedy that what happened, but and everybody admired him and liked him. And Frank was the same. Frank was very very relaxed, very easygoing. Yeah.
Well, it seems through all your life experiences, you have a very good attitude of, okay, I'll do it. Yes, I can. When you worked with the Henson Company, were they open to brainstorming? Did you feel that you were able to give suggestions on the movement and they incorporated that?
Yes, and they were very open to anything like that. And because if you remember, the Mystics actually have 4 arms. And so you don't work out what to do with 4 arms, So I had the idea, for a walking stick, if that was actually attached to your foot, so that when you went, the walking stick went with you, so it could be attached to a dead arm, but it looked like it was actually moving with your foot. So things like that, when you're working with a costume that's being built and constructed on you, so you can say, well, that worked, that doesn't work. What about this? Hey, that looks really good. It's just like this, and it's very exciting to be part of that creative process, and everybody being willing. Oh yeah, we could do that. So let's try it. And that was everything was well received. If you wanted to put ideas forward, see if they worked.
It was a magical film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know that Netflix now are doing a prequel.
Yes. Yes. Are you?
I've seen. No, I know somebody I know went for an audition for something else concerning with that film, and she took my telephone number with her. And when she went, and she said, "Oh, I've just worked with Hugh Spight," and they said, "Oh," they said, "Oh, have you got his telephone number by any chance?" And she said, "Yes, I have." So she said, I gave it to them. I never heard another word. So I was hoping to get them, but I've seen stills of some of the things, and it looks a little bit different. It looks much more sort of science fiction. So I don't know. The only thing I'm hoping is that it will revive an interest, in Dark Crystal, and people say, "Oh, well, we've got to see the original film now." You know what I mean? So I'm just hoping it's going to boost, that interest. But I do feel very privileged to be part, to be black, the Black Dalek and Doctor Who, Dark Crystal, and Star Wars, and to have the 3 films that have such a cult following. I was very, very fortunate. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Basically, it's one of those. It's showbiz, to the right place at the right time.
That's so true.
I do find it very funny that you went looking for adventure in Merchant Marines, and I think you had more adventure with your performances than you ever did in...
Yeah, I mean, but it was the whole thing with dance, really. And my poor old dad. When I went to drama college, well, that was bad enough. And then to come home a year later and saying, I've been up to London on audition for a ballet school. He walked out of the room. And people used to say to him, well, what's Hugh doing now? And he says, he's in the entertainment business. He would have never said that I was a ballet dancer. Anyway, there we go.
Did he get to see you do all those other things too, though?
Yes. In the end, they did come up to see me dance in London, and it was so important to me. And I was in Rambert, and Rambert is one of the top companies in Britain, and I danced in a ballet with 8.5 minutes solo without music, with Glenn Tetley. He's one of the top contemporary choreographers in the world. And I invited my parents up to London, and they had never seen me dance before. And they brought a cousin and a younger cousin and a husband to give them moral support. And afterwards I took them out to dinner. And all this time, as I said, people would say, you can't do this, you can't do this, and all the rest of it. And there I was, and it was at Sadler's Wells, which is the home of British Ballet in London. So we're sitting at the table, and I said, what did you think of the performance? And my mum said, yes, very nice, dear. What's this thing on the menu here? And but in that moment, I was liberated. In that moment, I understood they have not a clue what I am doing or what I've done. And I just, that's an aubergine dish, actually. But, it set me free. So all this time, I wanted to prove to them that because I'd been such a disappointment. They would say to people, Hugh's a big disappointment to us, so that was my one thing. And at that moment, I thought, they're clueless, they don't know what's going on. But then I sort of forgave them and said, oh, it's okay. But I was free then. I didn't have to prove anything anymore.
Is there anything in performance that you kind of regret?
Sorry, it's getting a bit melancholy here.
That you kind of regret that you didn't get a chance to pursue, or anything that you would see in the future that you would like to pursue?
There were certain films around. It was my choice either to sort of go out on my own and do this Animatronics Limited, because there was Labyrinth had just started. There was Little Shop of Horrors in Frank Oz.
Yes.
There was Fraggle Rock. There was all these things going on, and I'd stepped away from it to do my own thing. So, and sometimes, I sometimes think, what would have happened if I'd stuck with it? Because they actually asked me whether I'd be interested to go to America, and I thought, I was married and I had a little girl, little daughter, and I thought, I don't want to go to America. Why would I go to America? No, I didn't want to do that. But life is what it is.
So it was your choice then to step away from the Henson Company and and then just
I'm
trying to explore your own
yes,
thing.
explore my own thing. Yeah, and I did that for the and I went when I went to Hamburg. I started Animatronics International in Hamburg.
Oh wow!
And built things there for commercials and television. But the Germans are a little bit different. They because the studios were still in London, I didn't bring a whole bunch of people over to Germany to do things. I'd get them all built in England, and they wanted to see workshops and studios and stuff, and they've got a bit they were a bit funny like that, and so I sort of slowly moved away from that and started a catering company. Started a catering company in Hamburg.
Gentleman in glasses back there?
Yeah, is there any specific role that you've turned down that you regret?
No. I mean, a lot of things I would have liked to have done that I wasn't asked to do. That's showbiz,
Yeah.
But I mean, I've had a great time. So.
The young lady behind, gentlemen.
What was your favorite role or job throughout your career?
Well, my favorite role.
Your job, yeah.
No, I think it was Dark Crystal actually. To be just part of that whole process of creating and being part of that. That was very a big privilege, very special. So I think that was one of the best ones.
So I'm curious, when you said that you were an actor in Germany and you were doing all these English accents,
Yes.
Scottish. I'm curious what a German speaking with an accent of English would sound like.
Okay, well, I did a lot of commercials for a mineral water from southern Bavaria, but I had to be a Scotsman. And in the background there was going on. And I said, in Scotland das Whisky schmeckt so gut. Wir brauchen keine Wasser dazu. Aber Teinacher Mineralwasser schmeckt so gut. Wir brauchen kein Whisky dazu. Hey, cheers!
I don't know how you can top that. Ladies and gentlemen, Hugh Spight. Thank you so much. It was such a wonderful...